Hey up! Right, I often get criticised for making this kind of video because apparently a lot of viewers only come onto YouTube to listen to exhaust notes of particular motorcycles. Or they want to see a trial on how fast it will accelerate or what its top speed is. And so they get quite annoyed with me when I sort of publish videos regarding what they consider to be politics rather than motorcycling. It's not what they want to see, but imagine how channels like this might be sort of 5 years from now, 10 years from now. You know, I'm hoping I'm still going to be running it 10 years from now. If society has changed to the extent where in order to travel on your motorcycle you need a form of social credit issued by your local council that allows you to travel on your motorcycle more than, let's say, 5 miles from your home. Imagine what this channel would be like and how relevant motorcycling would be if you were forced to use all those social credits up in your car getting to work or going to do your weekly shopping. So you didn't have any credits left to ride your motorcycle, which meant all you could really do was just ride round in circles within a 5 mile radius of your home. Imagine what channels like this would be like if, you know, the electric vehicle had taken over by then. And relative to today, the demand for petrol would extremely low, so most of your petrol stations had closed down. Petrol prices had gone through the roof because the price of transporting small amounts here and there is substantially more expensive because the economy of scale no longer exists. And imagine how difficult it would be to put petrol in your motorcycle if you had no social credits left to cross those borders in order to get to your nearest petrol station. Does that put things a little more into perspective for you now as to why I'm tackling these issues now? Why I'm telling you about them now? Because bit by bit here in the UK, our freedom of travel is being gradually eroded by a relentless and insidious attack from every direction. In 2024, all motor vehicles will have to be fitted with speed limiters and onboard telemetry boxes that record where you go, when you went there, and how fast you travelled on any given road. A little black box that will tell the authorities every single move you make in your motor vehicle. In 2030, the sale of new petrol and diesel motorcars, vans and motorcycles below 125cc will be banned, with a ban on the sale of new motorcycles above 125cc to follow in 2035. City councils across the country are introducing zero emissions zones. So any petrol or diesel vehicle, regardless of its Euro emissions status, will receive a hefty fine if it strays into one of those zones, whether by accident or on purpose. So over the next few years, it will be a financial minefield trying to get to anywhere in the country on your petrol-powered motorcycle, car or van. And this is all in the name of zero emissions, a bid to stave off the climate change crisis that this planet is supposedly in. And I'm saying supposedly because I've looked into it, and, you know, this climate change crisis is by no means based on settled science. It's all based on modelling, the same sort of modelling used to forecast COVID fatalities during the pandemic, a figure that even the government statistics, official statistics, never got anywhere near. And here in the UK, even the Office for National Statistics at the end of it proclaimed that the official government statistics were overblown. Fatalities never got anywhere near what the stated they'd reached. Modelling is based on retrievable data and an awful lot of guesswork. And a lot of scientific factions do not consider it to be sound science, as was proven during the pandemic. So I will remain a skeptic, not a denier, a skeptic until there's more evidence available to me. Now, there's no doubt about it, the main driving force behind climate change alarmism is the WEF, the World Economic Forum. They've been banging on about it for years. For those that don't know, the World Economic Forum is an elitist club for extremely wealthy personalities and politicians. And the figurehead of the World Economic Forum, Mr. Klaus Schwab, recently proclaimed publicly that he was proud of the fact that the World Economic Forum, under his stewardship, had politically infiltrated just about every government in the Western world. Now, let's be clear, the World Economic Forum is not a democratically elected organisation. It's a club for billionaires whose lives are completely detached from reality, yet they think they know what is good for you. It is, in my view, a very dangerous organisation, and that alone, in my opinion, should be a reason for making it illegal for any serving government employee to be involved with or associated with in any way. Yet, our Prime Minister is purportedly a WEF member. And just like Boris Johnson before him, he is following the teachings of the WEF to the letter. Now, let's get down to business. The pandemic and the resulting lockdowns caused by that pandemic worldwide were a WEF's wet dream. An excuse to lock down the public for almost 2 years worldwide, restrict their movements, and pretty much take control of their lives. An experiment to see whether people would accept it and just how draconian the measures could be made before people started to push back. And they very much liked what they saw. And it's important to note that these assaults on personal travel began just after the first lockdowns here in the UK. While we were distracted by the government's fear-mongering and where we were going to get our next toilet roll from, these strategies were quietly, almost secretly, put in place. And the pursuit of net zero was ramped up to a level that so far we had not seen. Now, right at the beginning of this year, I reported that the Oxford City Council had voted in what was essentially the first zero emission zone in the UK, i.e. you cannot enter certain areas of the city with a motor vehicle unless it is zero emissions, which basically means an electric car. And I mooted at the time that the Department for Transport was using Oxford as a guinea pig, a test bed, in a bid to rid the UK of personal motorised transport. Don't forget, at the beginning of this year, Trudy Harrison, a minister for the Department of Transport, made it quite clear that private car ownership is a thing of the past, and that we should all be walking, using pedal cycles or using public transport. And it's my belief that Oxford is being used as a testbed for their future strategies before they unroll them countrywide. Now, what the Department for Transport is proposing is basically straight out of the WEF rulebook. What has become known as the 15-minute city. A societal situation whereby everything you could possibly need is within 15 minutes walk of your home, or 15 minutes cycling distance from your home. I mean, there's actually a bit of a difference between those two. But then I suppose Klaus Schwab and his followers have never walked or cycled anywhere, so they won't know the difference. Like I said, they're completely disconnected from reality. And so there is no longer any need for you to own a motor car, or motorcycle for that matter. Now, in Oxford, you would have thought that a zero emission zone was enough to clear up pollution in the city centre, make the roads more pleasant for cyclists and pedestrians, and of course clear the way for public transport. But apparently, no, that doesn't go far enough, so they've thought something else up. Yesterday morning, I received a message with a link to a news article. And I've got to admit, at first, I thought it was some sort of practical joke, a April Fool's joke, but not in April. But it turns out there is some foundation to it. Now, I need to make it clear from the start, all news-related articles that relate to this particular subject are fringe sources. I don't consider any of them to be mainstream media, but it seems very strange to me that the mainstream media has completely ignored it. Maybe at the moment for them this is a little bit too much of a hot potato for them to handle, so they're going to leave it for a while and see how it plays out. Now, the link that I received was from a publication called whatsupwiththat.com, and the headline under climate news was Oxfordshire Council to trial a climate lockdown starting in 2024. Now, this is a climate skeptic website, so I thought, yeah, I'm not just going to take their word for it, let's do a bit more digging. And I came up with some other similar articles that put a very draconian overtone onto what the Oxford Council is doing. The only other source that I could find was through the local newspaper, the Oxford Mail, which swings completely the other way, as though this is a totally normal, totally innocent strategy. It's perfectly reasonable, nothing to worry about. I suspect the truth lies somewhere in between the two leanings. And I'm making this video because, as I've said, the mainstream media is not reporting on this, and I think it's something we all need to keep a careful eye on. Now, the What's Up With That article reads as follows. Oxford County Council yesterday approved plans to lock residents into one of 6 zones to save the planet from global warming. The latest stage in the 15-minute city agenda is to place electronic gates on key roads in and out of the city, confining residents to their own neighbourhoods. Under the new scheme, if residents want to leave their zone, they will need permission from the council, who gets to decide who is worthy of freedom and who isn't. Under the new scheme, residents will be allowed to leave their zone a maximum of 100 days per year, but in order to even gain this, every resident must have to register their car details with the council, who will then track their movements via smart cameras around the city. Now, I'm going to leave a list of links in the video description down below, as well as an excerpt from the council's own website, which does confirm some elements of what has been written down here. Now, I think this article, if I'm honest, is a little bit melodramatic, and so are some of the other articles. But in the past, despite the melodrama, I have found some of these sites to be quite prophetic, with a lot of what they've sort of mooted becoming fact later on. So I'm not going to completely discount it. I'll also leave a link to the Oxford Mail, but to be honest, it's more or less a carbon copy of the Oxford City Council's website. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty much in line with the Oxford Council's views. The problem with this is sorting the wheat from the chaff, because there are a lot of elements in the article that I've just read out that do marry up with what the Oxford Council is saying. But I'm going to be honest, what the Oxford Council are saying, some of it doesn't make an awful lot of sense. I don't think they're being completely transparent. For a start, on their website, they've supplied a link that gives details of what the restrictions are going to be. But when you go onto it, it just shows Oxford outlined with a thick green line. So that gives you no information to the sort of intricacies of how this is going to work. What they do confirm is that each and every household will have to register their motor vehicles in order to get the 100-day-a-year pass to be able to cross these electronic gates. Now, by electronic gates, I don't think there is actually going to be a physical electronic gate there. This is all going to work by license number recognition cameras, which will allow the council to track your every movement to the city and gauge whether or not you are infringing the regulations. Now, I know there'll be some viewers looking at this and thinking, well, you know, that's not a problem. I've got a car, my wife's got a car, my son's got a car. We'll all have 100 days each. You can just mix and match between the three vehicles and just carry on as normal. The council's already thought of that. The 100-day pass will be shared between all vehicles registered at a particular address, so you can't exceed the 100-day pass per household. And it will be a maximum of 3 vehicles per household, so if you have a 4th car or a motorcycle or whatever you're stuffed, you're going to have to prioritise which are the most important vehicles. Now, this is going to cause some hassle. You know, if husband and wife both go to work separately, they both have to travel beyond the parameters of these limitations that they're setting down. The son or daughter has a car and also have to do the same thing. This is going to cause mayhem. And it's not entirely clear from the council's website what the restrictions actually are. They're referring to them as traffic filters, designed to pretty much eradicate, you know, traffic congestion within the city. Now, as I've said, the map that the council website has supplied isn't really of much help unless you live in that area and you have an intimate knowledge of the geography. But from what I can gather, it's basically closing off some of the main arterial routes in and out of the city. If you don't have a pass, you don't get to drive through it. However, some professional occupations will be exempt. I'm presuming that will mean hospital workers, doctors, nurses, emergency services, paramedics, fire brigade, police, and certain other occupations can apply for exemption. But I've got a problem with that because it creates a two-tier society, those that can and those that can't. It's offering a certain privilege to certain occupations, which is wrong. For the rest of those people that are going to fall foul of this directive, especially shift workers, this is likely to cause major logistical problems in getting to work and indeed getting home again. Now, in one of the articles, it states that a spokesman for the council has said categorically that it doesn't matter what objections there are for this trial, which is going to be a 6-month trial, by the way. It is going ahead anyway. There's going to be no further public consultation. And the reasons given for implementing this strategy is that it will make the roads more attractive for cyclists and pedestrians, and it will make it easier for public transport, and so make the city more prosperous. Now, how is it going to prosper if people can't get there? Now, in my younger days, I used public transport. When I didn't have to anymore, I vowed I never would again. It was unreliable, it was inconvenient. You had to mix with people that I would describe as undesirable. That's the reason that the private motorcar took off and public transport declined. If you take away the convenient means for people to get into a city centre to spend money, they're not going to revert to the inconvenience of public transport. They'll just go somewhere else. Again, this is the disconnect between the sort of elite politicians and the real world. In fact, the only parallel that I can draw here is my hometown, Hull. About 30 years ago, the local council started up a strategy of pedestrianising the entire city centre. There are one or two roads that do give private motor vehicles access, but when you get there isn't really any parking. The rest of it is either pedestrianised or it is dedicated bus lanes that only buses and taxis can use. When I was younger, at the beginning of this strategy, Hull was a bustling retail centre. In any day of the week except Sunday, because most shops were closed on Sundays in those days, you couldn't move in the city centre. It was packed. But as a result of this pedestrianisation strategy, the place is now a ghost town. And all the retail businesses have moved to retail parks outside of the city centre. It's completely killed the whole city centre off. And don't forget that parts of the city centre in Oxford are now zero emission zones. So even with your 100 days worth of passes, it's still a double-edged sword. These lessons have been learned in other cities. If you cut off access, you cut your own throat. As far as business is concerned, I just don't understand why Oxford hasn't learnt that lesson from other examples around the country. Now, certain vehicles will be exempt. The Oxford City official website does stipulate that mopeds will be exempt, but there is no mention of motorcycles, despite another news article which obviously has got it wrong, saying that motorcycles will be exempt. There's no indication of that on the official website. Now, this has been instigated by the Oxfordshire County Council, not the Oxford City Council. The Oxfordshire County Council is responsible for highways, and so, of course, is under direction of the Department for Transport. If they make this work without too much of a fuss, this will start to be rolled out into other cities. And if their behaviour over the last 3 years is anything to go by, they will do it quickly. And once these policies are in place, they will never be revoked. Obviously, as this spreads across the country, coupled with ULEZ and zero emission zones, it is going to become virtually impossible to navigate the British Isles. And it's clear that these sort of policies are going to start to trap people within their own neighbourhoods. This is a serious infringement of people's liberties. And these 100-day passes, as generous as they may seem at face value, I believe is the first example that we are going to see of a social credit system. Once you've used up your allotted days travelling, that's it, you're stuck at home. Now, we look at certain regimes around the world that have been doing this kind of thing for decades, and we look at it with disdain. And personally, I find it alarming that it's now happening here in the UK. Just 3 years ago, here in the UK, this would have been considered unthinkable. There's no way this is ever going to happen. So I'm going to say, not just to people that live in the UK, but to people in America, Australia, New Zealand, the rest of the Western world, sit up and pay attention. If this can happen here, a country that is often described as the birthplace of democracy, it can happen anywhere. I would love to hear your thoughts on this in the comments section down below, but please be polite, please be respectful, please don't start arguments. Once again, thank you so much for watching this and my other videos, and in doing so helping to support this channel. I really do appreciate it. I'd also appreciate if you would leave a like on this video, and if you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing to the channel. Hit the notification bell and ensure that your notifications are enabled. That way, if there are any other updates on this particular subject or related subjects, YouTube will let you know. I will, of course, be back on Friday, so until then, please ride safely, and I'll see you soon.